against a team that handed Carolina 3 of its 6 losses in 2017. If the Panthers...
Welcome to the Southeastern North Carolina Radio Reading Service, a United Way partner agency. We are located on the campus of Fayetteville State University, and our signal is carried by WUNC Chapel Hill. Today is Monday, April what?
The 23rd.
23rd. Thank you, guys. Your radio hosts are
Nehemiah Suber
and Wanda. We will be reading from the Sunday Fayetteville Observer. So here we go.
The NCDBA will be hosting a summer golf tournament. The North Carolina Business Association will host its inaugural summer golf tournament on August 6th in Fayetteville. The event, which is open to association members, their guests, and the general public, will take place at Gates Ford Golf and Country Club on Irongate Drive. The NCDBA officials are hosting the event in conjunction with Fayetteville Technical Community College and the North Carolina Military Business Center. The cost to participate is $100 per player or $75 for active duty military and government employees. For more information or to register, go to ncdba.com.
Racism is a white problem. Racism is a white problem. I know that many white people will instinctively and emphatically resist that observation. They'll note the self-evident truth that prejudice is confined to no one culture or color. Having known more than a few African-American bigots, homophobes, and anti-Semites, I'll be happy to concede the point. But racism is more than prejudice. It is rather the system by which prejudice is encoded into the laws and customs of a society, so that, to take an example, not quite at random, 2 black men can be arrested for waiting quietly on a prospective business associate to arrive for a meeting at Starbucks. People of color have no access to the system that allows that. So while they must figure out how to live under racism, racism itself is not their problem. The system was built by and for white people. It's up to them to dismantle it. That's a truth white men and women often find difficult to process. I'm reminded of something a white Southern-born colleague wrote in 1995. The late Michael Browning and I were traveling the South during interviews and visiting historic sites for a series of essays on race. In Atlanta, we sat down with the Reverend C.T. Vivian, a former aide to the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., and he mentioned a question. He asked white people in his racial justice seminars, "Have you ever gotten down on your knees and asked God to forgive you for your racism?" The question struck Michael like an uppercut. Here's what he wrote. Vivian looks at me. The question is no longer rhetorical, but I do not reply. Southern irresolution. How, if I am as benevolent as I think I am, can black people see me as such a monster? Am I an inert part of some vast, weighty boulder of oppression? Do I injure blacks by breathing and just being white? Irresolution is a common response. So are defensiveness and denial, rationalization, justification, and a kind of puffed-up indignation accessible only to the profoundly entitled and entirely clueless. Think of that look on Sean Hannity's face when he has to discuss, well, anything having to do with race. What you are less likely to encounter when confronted by racism is white people who will own the problem, who will have the guts, humanity, and humility required to confront it, assess it, and resolve it. So this column is a standing ovation for Starbucks. Last week, faced with public relation disaster noted above, CEO Kevin Johnson did all the expected things. He said what happened was wrong. He issued apologies. He did the whole this is not who we are routine. Then Johnson did something unexpected, announcing the closure of 8,000 company-owned U.S. stores on the afternoon of May 29th so that his nearly 175,000 employees can undergo training in preventing implicit bias. Given how difficult it can be to get white people to even acknowledge the reality of implicit bias, we ought not breeze past the significance of that. Starbucks deserves credit for one of the most authentic and creative corporate responses in recent memory. One of the bravest, too, given the likely hit to the company's coffers. My brother later informed me that he and his management team, who are state employees, stayed and worked late and let the workers go, and those workers used vacation time. He has a whole narrative about how hard state employees work him. I let him have it. During the outage, someone texted me, will people be able to break out of jail while the power is out? These two articles do not seem to coincide to me. I think there is some confusion here. That's why it sounds like we've jumped over to something else. So I'm going to stop the Starbucks article and look for the other piece. It seems like both of these authors' last name ends in Pitts. So one is Leonard Pitts, and I think the other one belongs to Myron Pitts. So please excuse me, and I'll find the other part of this article hopefully at some point during this broadcast.
In other news, protect our school from the gun control. As usual, there is a heated debate over how to deal with the epidemic of mass shootings in the United States. The tragedy on Valentine's Day in Parkland, Florida, has laid bare every disagreement over guns. Even as teenage survivors of the shooting have started a new movement and pushed towards gun control under the hashtag #NeverAgain. Most of the Parkland activists and their allies support measures that would ban specific guns, namely ones that are classified as assault-style rifles. Advocates for gun rights say such a move would only punish law-abiding gun owners and place a target on most popular guns for enthusiasts, the RA-15. A press for more background checks appeals to most Americans, according to pollings, but is opposed by the National Rifle Association. Contrary to popular beliefs, however, there is a low-hanging fruit in the gun debate. A strong majority of the people would easily agree to a number of measures we can take to secure our schools, and North Carolina lawmakers should take notes. Since Parkland, various committees in the General Assembly have talked about proposals. It's time for those ideas to move out of committee and into law. Meanwhile, legislators should take a serious look at Governor Roy Cooper's proposal for an additional $130 million to make schools and colleges safer. The governor laid out his proposal on Thursday during a tour at Cheddar Ridge High School in Hillsborough. His ideas included creating a $65 million reserve to be used by public schools, the University of North Carolina, and the community college system toward building improvements. These include better communication and monitoring systems for doors, which will help aging schools that have open entrance and weak doors. Additionally, Cooper's proposal addressed the mental health aspect of gun violence, something that usually gets short shrift in legislation. Despite it being raised often after massacres like Parkland, he wants $40 million to hire at least 500 more psychologists, social workers, nurses, and counselors at schools statewide. The number of psychologists and counselors in schools are below the recommended average, said organizations representing those workers. 17 of the state's 150 school systems lack a single full-time school psychologist, according to the Associated Press, citing figures from the Department of Public Instruction. In Cumberland County, two. Leaders are looking at a way to prevent mass violence by trying to improve schools as much as possible. The same day that Cooper spoke in Hillsborough, Cumberland County School, officials asked state lawyers to pursue more funding for school resource officers. The officers, who are sheriff's deputies, serve in every high school and middle school, and one deputy serves in every elementary school. The system would need 43 additional officers to serve every school. Tim Kinlaw, intern superintendent, said it cost the system $64,800 to pay salary and benefit for each school resource official. But the state provides $37,900 in funding per officer. On hand to hear his remarks were Democratic Representative Elmer Floyd, Marcus Lucas, and Bill Richardson, and Republican Senator Wesley Merritt, and Representative John Schultz. Cumberland County Schools leaders should be commended for just sitting and waiting. The system has already added security improvement, and including fencing around Morganton Road Elementary School. Before the school year is out, Kinlaw wants to start implementations of a program that would enlist volunteers to act as school angels on campus. The volunteer would not be empowered to confront suspicious people, but they would act as another set of eyes and ears for the administration and school resource officers. What the actions and proposal at the local and state level makes clear is that protecting schools from potential acts of violence will not come down to one magical solution, but rather a patchwork of overlapping creative ideas. That means teamwork is essential. The Republican-dominated state legislature and Democratic government are known for engaging in sharp patriotism battles, and this is not very surprising that conservative lawmakers and non-committal on Cooper's other ideas on gun violence, which includes more restrictive gun laws. But there is no reason the two sides cannot compromise on measures to improve school safety. We are talking about protecting our most precious resources, our children, and the time to act was yesterday.
Okay, you all, gotten myself together here. So, the racism is a white problem article. I'm going to read the last paragraph that I gave you and then continue on with the piece. Starbucks deserves credit for one of the most authentic and creative corporate responses in recent memory. One of the bravest, too, given the likely hit to the company's coffers the mass closures represents. And as we are singing praises, let's spare a stanza or two for the white civilians at Starbucks who saw what was happening, whipped out their cell phones to record it, and demanded answers from the cops. Nor should we forget those who showed up and showed out at subsequent protests. One can only hope other white people are taking note. Other white institutions too, meaning coffee shops, yes, but also libraries, churches, supermarkets, gyms, and police departments. Ultimately, after all, this is not a Starbucks problem, but an American problem. Until we face it, the next public relations disaster or tragedy is always just around the corner. It would be good to see Americans, particularly white Americans, take ownership of that truth. To its credit, Starbucks just did. This article is written by Leonard Pitts, and he's a columnist for the Miami Herald. Contact him at lpitts@miamiherald.com. Okay, I'll read another one, Nehemiah, since I had to break out for a minute. Okay, PwC customers go off the grid on a sunny day. So where were you during the great power outage of April 20th, 2018? I had just settled into my seat in the studio at WIDU radio station, where on Fridays I do a 1-hour show with my older brothers starting at 11 a.m. We were just fixing to kick things off, then zap, no lights. Does the board still work? I asked the producer, Tammy. She said, we got nothing. I didn't know then that more than 35,000 other customers of the Public Works Commission had the same complaint. They got nothing. I thought my middle brother got himself a day off. He works in the Cumberland County Courthouse. The courthouse folks toughed it out till sometime afternoon before they let everybody go on their way. My brother later informed me that he and his management team, who are state employees, stayed and worked and let the workers go, and those workers used vacation time. He has a whole narrative about how hard state employees work. I let him have at it. During the outage, someone texted me, will people be able to break out of jail while the power is out? The answer is an unequivocal no way, Jose. That's too bad for folks locked up. Then again, we did tell them to stay in school. When I returned to work, I wondered for a millisecond if my badge that unlocks the employee entrance would work. Beep, green light, it did. Let's get this newspaper out. I entered a newsroom awash in semi-darkness with several glowing screens framing my co-workers' silhouettes. We were on a generator. The news never sleeps. Reports came from all over the city. Downtown was out. Fayetteville State was out. A relative who works there said they had to evacuate the buildings. The crisis team is meeting now, she wrote. Crisis team? Whoa, I like that. I can envision Liam Neeson or The Rock being on this team. Anyway, FSU folks got sent home too. Good work, team. The Public Works Commission updated its Facebook page with the facts. It named places without power, including parts of the city near the Martin Luther King Jr. Freeway, Cumberland and Camden Roads, NC 87, and Gillespie Street. Then it sent another update adding Ramsey Street, Country Club Drive, Shaw Road, River Road, Stacy Weaver Drive, Cedar Creek Road, and Dunn Road. Later, the PWC said Duke Energy experienced problems with the line that provides power into the section of the PWC power grid. Duke is working to solve the issue as quickly as they can. Duke, oh they. Talk about a company that could use more glowing press around here. Duke Energy was last seen adding $2 a month to the cost of our PWC bills to help pay for the cleanup of rivers Duke itself fouled up with its nasty behind coal ash. Now they put us in the dark. Well, not really in the dark. In fact, I cannot think of a recent time where such a major outage happened on a more brilliant and sunny day. There wasn't a raindrop or stiff breeze in sight, much less a hurricane, like Matthew in 2016, which was the last time we had a sizable KO of the power grid. No wonder just about everybody Friday went out to lunch instead of hanging around in their office. Driving around town, I saw police officers directing traffic at many intersections where the lights were out. The Fayetteville Police Department put on social media that if drivers encountered an intersection with a non-working traffic light or no officers, they should treat it as a four-way stop. Great advice. With one flaw, most drivers don't know what to do at a four-way stop. It's downright painful to watch them try to figure it out. A co-worker said power outages make the case for roundabouts. That's knowledge. I passed the downtown cop, Paul Taylor, directing traffic at the intersection of Hay and Old Streets. I rolled down the window and asked, couldn't he delegate this to somebody else? He laughed, but his eyes also seemed to say, you see, I'm working here, right? Cool dude, Paul is aces. I walked into City Center Gallery and Books at 2-something o'clock and was surprised to find the store's track lighting all lit up. I asked manager Laura Laycock when she got the power back. About 2 or 3 seconds before you walked in, she said. I nodded my head like I got it like that. While downtown, I texted my loose leaf tea guy. Yes, I have a tea guy. What of it? Josh at Winterbloom texted he had to close the shop temporarily. At 2:40 he texted, "Back open." You can't keep a good tea guy down, but I already knew that long before the great power outage of April 20th, 2018. This article is written by columnist Myron B. Pitts, who can be reached at mpitts@fayobserver.com or 486-3559.
The payback offer protecting our school from gun violence. Suspected Florida school shooter appears in court. A man accused of opening fire at a Florida high school was denied bond during his first court appearance Saturday. The Alcoa Star Banner reported that Sky Bulch appeared before Judge William Willward Pope via video conference at the Marion County Jail with a public defender at his side. Pope said he denied bail due to the nature of the charges against Bulch, which included terrorism, aggravated assault with a firearm, and carrying a concealed firearm. A second hearing for Bulch was set for May 22nd. Friday's shooting at Forest High School in Alcoa happened on a day planned for a national classroom walkout to protest gun violence and left one person wounded. Just hours after the shooting, a detailed picture of the troubled teen's life and a possible motive emerged in interviews with detectives and local newspapers. The 19-year-old Bulch allegedly told Marion County Sheriff's investigators he considered shooting up a church, but settled on a school because it created more attention. The shooting comes just over 2 months after a gunman killed 17 people and wounded 17 others at Major Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Nicholas Cruz, 19, faces the death penalty if convicted in that Valentine's Day shooting. Bulch told authorities he purchased a shotgun in a private sale roughly a week after the Parkland shooting. He said there is no paperwork for the 1930 shotgun and there was no background check because it was a private sale. Detectives said Bulch told them he felt an adrenaline rush Friday morning and was ready for the shooting, but said the excitement quickly wore off, and he was unable to carry out his plan. When he first entered the school, he said it was empty, so he went to the bathroom and put on a tactical vest and gloves. Boyce told detectives he fired into a classroom door, that the shrapnel hit a student in the ankle. The alleged shooter then dropped his weapon and surrendered to one of his former teachers. His hands were up and he said he wanted to be arrested. "I am mentally ill." Kelly McManus, public consult, quoted him saying, "She said he told her he didn't think the gun would work." The two talked for about 3 minutes until the principal and the school resource official took him into custody. Boyce apologized as he was led away in handcuffs. The Star Banner interviewed Boyce shortly after his arrest. He said his early memories are of violence and conflict. The paper didn't elaborate. Boyce said he wants to join the Marine Corps but couldn't because he had been committed for a mental health evaluation when he was only 14 years old.
This is Live Wire. First question. I live in a nice neighborhood in Hope Mills, but there is one house out of 9 houses that has so much trash and junk in the yard it's an eyesore. It has kids' toys, refrigerator, washing machine, tools, bikes. What can we do? Who can we complain to? This is from E.T. in Hope Mills. And the answer is potential Hope Mills code enforcement violations can be reported to Emily Widener at 429-3514 or E.A. Widener at townofhopemills.com. Another question, how many Major League Baseball players got their start from playing with the Fayetteville Generals? The answer is, that's from J.H. in Roseboro. And the answer is from 1987 Through 1996, the Generals played as a Detroit Tigers affiliate in the Class A South Atlantic League. The team uniforms were featured in the popular baseball movie Bull Durham, and the franchise helped develop a number of major leaguers. Those players included Travis Fryman, Juan Encarnacion, Scott Aldred, Frank Catalanoto, and Mitt Collier, before the Tigers ended the decade-long association. Based on a November 21st, 2016 story that appeared in the Observer, 52 players eventually went on to the majors after a stint with the Fayetteville Generals. However, that doesn't mean that they all got their start with the Generals. Prior to the 1997 season, the Generals were renamed the Cape Fear Crocs. Livewire seeks to answer questions of general interest and consumer topics. Initials are used to identify questioners when names are given. Contact Livewire at livewire@fayeobserver.com or at 486-3516.
In other news, a man is killed in a random knife attack in Los Angeles. A homeless man who randomly stabbed a man to death as he was holding his daughter in a crowded Southern California restaurant was reported just a few hours earlier before disruptive behavior, but police ultimately determined he was not a threat, authorities said Saturday. Jamal Jackson, 49, is facing a first-degree murder charge in the death of 35-year-old Anthony Mell. He was being held in Ventura County Jail on a $1.5 million bail. It was unclear if Jackson, who is also a convicted felon, had an attorney to speak on his behalf. Mel and his wife were eating dinner with their 5-year-old daughter Wednesday at Aloha Steakhouse in Ventura. The girl was sitting on her father's lap when prosecutors said Jackson walked up and stabbed Mel in the neck. Prosecutor Richard Simmons said patron and a restaurant employee followed Jackson out of the restaurant even though he still had the knife. They kept track of him until Ventura police arrived and arrested him. Mel was taken to the hospital and died Thursday after being taken off life support. It's horrible, Simmons said. You don't think you are going to be killed when you are going out to dinner at a nice restaurant with your family and you didn't do anything. Simmons said the two men had not interacted before the attack. Yes. He was sitting there with his daughter in his lap, Simmons said. You're not supposed to die that way. Mel's loved one started a GoFundMe page to help raise money for a funeral and to support his wife and daughter. Mel's Facebook page was filled with photos of his daughter and said he was a manager at an AT&T store. Police confirmed that a bystander reported a man who turned out to be Jackson for disruptive behavior several hours before the stabbing. According to the bystander, a man was yelling on a promenade not far from the beachside restaurant about 3 hours before the attack. Patrol officers were out on other calls, so command center sheriff staff monitored a man via a peer security camera system for more than 20 minutes before deciding he didn't seem to be a threat, police said. Police are asking anyone who spoke with Jackson during that time to contact investigators. The killing prompted the Ventura City Council to increase police patrol in the area and add staff members to monitor security cameras, among other measures. We are extremely disheartened and infuriated by this criminal attack, Mayor Neil Anderson said in a statement. We will not tolerate this in our community. Nothing is more important than the safety of our visitors, residents, and businesses. If convicted, Jackson faced up to 55 years in prison, according to online court.
This is the Southeastern North Carolina Radio Reading Service, a United Way partner agency. We broadcast from the campus of Fayetteville State University, and our signal is carried by WUNC Chapel Hill. As a nonprofit agency, we rely on public donations. We request your support to continue our services. When making charitable donations, please keep the Southeastern North Carolina Radio Reading Service in mind. Our post office box number is 35029, Fayetteville, North Carolina 28303. If you have any questions or comments, please call us at 910-672-1600 or our toll-free number 1-844-709-5656. Your radio hosts are
Nehemiah Suber
and Wanda, and we are proud to serve you today. Israel's Lieberman blames Hamas over Gaza deaths. Israel's defense minister said Saturday that Hamas leaders are the only culprits in continued bloodshed on the Gaza border. As the European Union and top United Nations official made new demands to investigate shootings of unarmed Palestinians by Israeli soldiers, including the killing of a 14-year-old boy. Avigdor Lieberman's comments on Twitter came a day after 4 Palestinians, including the teen, were shot and killed by Israeli army fire from across the border fence, according to Gaza health officials. More than 150 Palestinians were wounded Friday in the 4th round of weekly Hamas-led mass protests in the border area. The teen, Mohammed Ayub, was about 150 yards from the fence when he was hit. Gaza photographer Abed al-Hakim Abu Rish told the Associated Press. He said that the boy was about to take cover when he was shot and fell to the ground, collapsing head first. The Israeli military says it is investigating the incident. The latest deaths brought to 32 the number of Palestinians killed by Israeli troops in protests since late March. More than 1,600 have been wounded by live rounds in the past 3 weeks, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. The rising Palestinian casualty toll signaled that Israel's military is sticking to its open fire rules despite international criticism of the use of lethal force against unarmed protesters. Israel has said it is defending its sovereign border, including Israeli communities on the other side. It has alleged that Hamas used the protest as cover for attacks and for damaging the border fence. Late Saturday, the military released photos and videos depicting what it has said it is trying to counter. In one image, young boys under the cover of smoke are seen charging the fence and uprooting part of it to allow for an infiltration. The military said it has distributed leaflets warning the residents of Gaza to stay away from the fence, but alleged that the terror organization in the Gaza Strip continues to exploit civilians, including many youth and children, while putting them in unnecessary danger. Rights groups have said Israel's open fire orders are unlawful because they effectively allow soldiers to open fire on unarmed demonstrators. The marches are part of what organizers have billed as an escalating showdown with Israel to culminate in a mass march on May 15th. The top Hamas leader, Ismail Haniyeh, said Friday that people should get ready for large crowds spilling across the border that day. Our people will outnumber the occupation and force it from our land, he said, referring to Israel. The latest killings sparked new demands by senior UN official and by the EU for an investigation. Nikolay Ladinov, a top UN envoy in the region, said on Twitter that it is outrageous to shoot at children. The European Union urged the Israeli army to refrain from using lethal force against unarmed protesters. Mohammed Ayub's father, Ibrahim, said Saturday that his son was killed in cold blood. Mohammed did not deserve to be executed, the 42-year-old said as mourners streamed to the family's shack in the Jabalia refugee camp. He was not holding a stone or a gun. Muhammad was not running toward the fence. The Israeli military said Saturday that all reports of fatal shootings by Israeli soldiers, including that of the teen, are thoroughly checked by the relevant command echelons, examined by a fact-finding assessment mechanism, and findings transferred to the military advocate general. Lieberman, the Israeli defense minister, said on Twitter that the only culprits in the death of the boy in Gaza are Hamas leaders. He said they are cowardly leaders who hide behind women and children and send them forward as a human shield so that they can continue to dig tunnels and carry out terrorist actions against Israel.
In a new article, New Memorial offers a chance to remember. In Montgomery, Alabama, Elmore Bourne defied the odds against black men and built several successful businesses during the harsh era of Jim Crow segregation in the South. He had more money than a lot of the whites, which his descendants believe was all that it took to get him lynched in 1947. He was shot to death by a white neighbor, according to news accounts at the time, and the shooter was never prosecuted. But Bolling's name is now listed among thousands on a new memorial for victims of hate-inspired lynching that terrorized generations of the United States blacks. Daughter Josephine Bolling McCall is anxious to see the monument located about 20 miles from where her father was killed in rural Lowndes County. The National Memorial for Peace and Justice opened Thursday and is a project of the nonprofit Equal Justice Initiative, a legal advocacy group in Montgomery. The organization says the combined museum and memorial will be the nation's first site to document racial inequality in America from slavery through Jim Crow to the issues of today. In the American South, we do not talk about slavery. We don't have monuments and memorials that confront the legacy of lynching. We haven't really confronted the difficulties of segregation, and because of that, I think we are still burdened by that history, said Executive Director Brian Stevenson. The site includes a memorial of the victims of 4,400 terror lynchings of black people in 800 U.S. counties from 1877 through 1950. All but 300 were in the South, and prosecutions were rare in any of the cases. Stevenson said they emphasized the lynching era because he believes it's an aspect of the nation's racial history that discussed the least. Most people in this country can't name a single African American who was lynched between 1877 and 1950, even though thousands of African Americans were subjects to this violence. Stevenson said the organization said a common theme ran through the saying, which it differentiates from extrajudicial killings and places that simply lacks courts. A desire to impose fear on minorities and maintain strict white control. Some lynchings drew huge crowds and were even photographed, yet authorities routinely ruled they were committed by persons unknown. McCall, age 70, said her father's killing still hangs over her family. The memorial could help heal individual families and the nation by acknowledging the painful legacy of racial murderers. She said, it's important that people to whom the injustice have been given are actually being recognized, and at least in some measures, a relief is sought through discussion, said McCall.
Letters to the Observer. Train parking? Good luck. It's disgusting that the train station has no parking spaces due to construction of that bleak baseball field that won't be open for another year. I'm handicapped, use a cane, and had to park at the museum and cross the tracks to get to the station. What idiot decided on this? Fire him. This is from Barbara Biggs in Fayetteville. This gateway doesn't work. While it's an exciting time downtown with the new baseball stadium as well as the Prince Charles renovations, has anyone taken the time to think about visitors and what they see entering the city? A lot of dilapidated buildings and unattractive sights are sure to capture the eyes of those who enter. So while we celebrate the new stadium, we need to look at the big picture. Start with what visitors see as they exit I-95 onto Highway 24. Instead of restaurants, hotels, museums, amusements, and gas stations, they're greeted with undeveloped farmland. Still a head scratcher after all these years. As they get closer to the Cape Fear River, they find an undeveloped riverfront, although there have been numerous plans to change that, and the river is littered by debris. Much of the area from the river to downtown is unsightly, especially on Russell or Person streets, and with downtown thriving, the US 301 corridor from the Coliseum could provide guests for the hotels along that route that currently appear to struggle with adequate occupancy. With the occupancy, these hotels could once again be under the signage of name brand hotels, like the former Ramada Inn. I can only envision these changes, but our city leaders can take it upon themselves to make our city a destination for visitors. We've got to stop living in the past and take our city into the future. Fayetteville deserves it. Michael Anthony Kivett, Fayetteville.
In other news, house fire displaces Fayetteville resident. A Fayetteville resident has had to find somewhere to stay early Saturday after a fire in Robinwood Estate neighborhood. Firefighters were called to the house in the 6600 block of Bond Road near Sudbury Drive, just before 12:30 a.m. According to a statement released by the Fayetteville Fire Department, the neighborhood between Strickland Bridge Road and Rayford Road in southwest Fayetteville. The first arriving unit found smoke coming from the front of a single-story house. The occupants evacuated. The statement said fire crew were able to enter the house and extinguish a fire in the bedroom area. The cause of the fire is under investigation. There were no injuries. Workers from Lumbee River Electric Membership Corporation disconnected the power to the house. On top of that, a body is found near Rayford Road. Police said the death of the person whose body was found Saturday does not appear to be suspicious. The person's body was reportedly discovered Saturday morning near the intersection of Rayford Road and Skibbon Road. The body will be sent to the State Office of the Chief Medical Examiner to determine the cause of death, according to a police spokesman. The person's identity has not been released because his or her family has not been notified.
Moore County man impaled. A man was airlifted to a trauma center Saturday afternoon after falling and becoming impaled on a piece of metal outside of Southern Pines. Emergency responders were dispatched around 1:30 p.m. to a home in the 100 block of Loden Drive near the airport to report reports of a man falling out of the back of a moving truck and becoming impaled through his back by a metal rack. According to public safety officials, firefighters and paramedics were able to cut the metal rack and secure the piece of metal still attached to the man before transporting him by ambulance to the Moore County Airport. From there, he was flown to a trauma center by helicopter. Responding to the incident were units with the Southern Pines Fire and Rescue and Moore County EMS.
The time to pay for parking. The free ride is over, or rather the free parking, at least in some places downtown, during certain events. For the first time, the city of Fayetteville will charge for parking during the Dogwood Festival, which starts Thursday and will run through the weekend. The festival usually draws more than 100,000 people if the weather cooperates. This year, the private company that collects parking money for the city will charge $10 at 3 spots: the Franklin Street parking deck, the lot across from the deck, and the lot at the corner of Anderson and Old Street. We hate to be the ones to say it, but we agree with Mayor Mitch Cullivan and other city officials. With the baseball stadium under construction that will bring many more people downtown on a regular basis, the city would be unwise to continue leaving money on the table that could be made for parking. Cullivan puts that figure at $200,000 a year. Charging money would put Fayetteville in the line with the state's other large metros. It's a reminder that playing in the big leagues comes with a few extra costs. That said, there will still be plenty of free parking at the Dogwood Festival, but get there early.